What's going on, everybody? This is Dr. Brent Pritt with Science of Falling, and this is going to be episode 4 of the Science of Falling podcast. Today, I have an awesome guest coming on the podcast. It is Liz, my former PT classmate. She is absolutely awesome, but recently she hurt herself in a falling accident, and we got to talking about how this happened, how some strategies might have prevented it, but also how sometimes it's hard to stop yourself when you have a natural reaction. So I'm gonna throw it off to Liz and have her introduce herself to you, and we'll get into this conversation.
Hey everybody, as Brent said, my name's Liz Michaud. I graduated with Brent this past May at the University of New England in Maine. And since then I moved to Ohio and I got licensed, and now I'm working at 2 inpatient rehab facilities, one skilled nursing and one in a hospital. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, except right now I'm not working because of my injury.
So yeah, tell us about that injury. Obviously you went from being, licensed PT, working, and then all of a sudden you hurt yourself and now you can't work. So, what happened to you?
Yeah, so this happened on January 24th, and it was very icy, a lot of black ice. And my boyfriend and I were out walking our dog at night. It was pitch black. There was a street light, so I could see. And I knew that the ground was icy. And I was just kind of having fun, skating along in my sneakers on the sidewalk. And then all of a sudden, my left foot went out from under me, and I just instantly reacted by stepping back with my right foot. And I could just feel my whole foot turn outwards. So it was an externally rotated and everted position. And like all of my weight went back on that foot in like the split second, and I just felt a pop, and I was like, oh no, that can't be good.
Oh my gosh.
But the weird thing is I remember feeling or thinking clearly, like as I had reached back with my foot, I was like, I know better. I should not try to stop myself. I should just kind of go with the flow, maybe try to break out one of those rolls that I saw Brent teaching online. And I've also hurt myself in the past by falling. I broke my back in high school. Oh. So I think that was also kind of why I was like, no, I don't want to fall on my butt and break my back again, even though I know that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of, it was so funny. I remember thinking, Liz, why are you doing this? This is so stupid. And then I fell, and then I was like, Mike, call 911. And he was like, oh no.
Oh my gosh. And it's I think that's such an important thing, because you're a PT, exactly, you shouldn't be trying to save yourself, especially in that situation, right? Falling on ice, you have almost no control. And then you've also been a supporter of what I'm doing here, so I appreciate that. But so you kind of seen what I've been doing, but despite all that, your instincts took over, right?
They sure did, unfortunately.
And that's kind of thing, sometimes our instincts are wrong. And that's when you actually messaged me on, I think we messaged on LinkedIn first. Mm-hmm. And you said, hey, this happened to me. What do you think about instincts? And you're saying, I love what you're teaching, but not everybody's going to be doing these roles every single day and getting super good at it and making it, second nature. So we kind of both agreed that, as much as what I'm teaching or trying to teach is useful, it's not necessarily always practical. Correct? Is that kind of what you were thinking when you messaged me originally?
Yep. Because instinct is so hard to overcome. Like if you think about even just something completely unrelated, like training a dog, like my boyfriend and I just got a new dog, and we've been, every time we go on a walk, she tries to chase after the squirrels, and we're like, do we try to tell her no to go against her instinct completely, or just kind of let her do it, or try to distract her and move on? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of similar with like falling. Like our first instinct is to try to stop ourselves so that we don't get hurt. But we know that a lot of the research shows that when you try to stop yourself, that's actually when you are more likely to get hurt, because you're not as relaxed and you're not allowing your body to kind of disperse the forces over a more generalized area, instead of just taking all of the force like in your ankle or your arms mm-hmm. and something like that.
And you happen to take out all of it in your ankle, which is
sure did. Yep.
Terrible. And then, whenever I think about, you kind of like, you want to just go with the flow and disperse the force. For some reason in my brain, I always get this picture of a tornado and this giant cow swirling in the tornado, and then hits somebody and knocks them out. And then they fall to the ground and they're fine. But then you have the person that doesn't get knocked out in a tornado if they get swept up and they hit the ground, and then they have a bunch of broken bones. Mm-hmm. as much, I don't know how much of that is in reality and me just watching movies too much.
I mean, maybe a little bit of both.
The giant swirling cow, I think, is more movie-esque, but
Probably.
it's kind of the same idea though. There has been incidences where people get swept up in these tornadoes. They might not go 300 feet up in the air, but they get swept up a little bit, and if they get knocked out, they're less likely to get hurt because they're kind of loose and Gumby-like, and they're allowed to kind of disperse that force and not try to stop it. Right. Whereas if your joints are stiff, the force has to go somewhere, right? Which is kind of what you did when you stepped backwards and kind of used your ankle to stop yourself.
Yep.
So tell us about your journey from breaking it, your ankle, to now. Where are you at? How are you doing?
I broke it on January 25th. Went to the ER. They put me in a splint. And then I got surgery on February 1st. So they put a plate on my fibula, because that's the bone that I broke, and with 6 screws to kind of stabilize the fracture. And then they also put the tightrope across to stabilize the syndesmosis so that my tibia and fibula weren't separating every time I put my foot down. So now I am still in a boot, still have crutches. I'm about 3.5 to 4 weeks post-op, and I'm up to 50% weight bearing. And I can do active range of motion with my foot out of the boot frequently throughout the day. But that's kind of where I am right now. And I'll hopefully be starting outpatient PT in 2 weeks for strength and balance training.
Awesome. So yeah, we kind of talked about that before we started the podcast, that you're doing your own rehab right now because you have the knowledge. Right. How do you think going as a healthcare provider, going to another person in the same profession, how do you think that's going to help you out? What are the things you're kind of looking for from them? In terms of knowledge base that you're kind of might be lacking a little bit? What is your thoughts on that?
So I'm kind of, I don't know, a little, like, I'm excited to go receive outpatient PT because this is the profession that I love. And I always enjoy hanging out with other PTs. I'm also a little bit apprehensive because I'm like, well, I am a PT, so do I really need to go get PT from another PT, or can I just do it myself? But I think, I'm excited. I definitely don't have the equipment that I would need at home as compared to what I can have in a PT gym. So like that is definitely going to be very beneficial. And I'll have someone there to guard me during balance training so that I can really focus more on improving my balance and proprioception as opposed to just, using my couch as like a backdrop in case I do fall down.
Hey, couches are great. All right.
Yeah.
Don't hate on the couches.
But yeah, I think that I'm also a new grad technically still, because I haven't really worked a whole lot since graduation. And I'm also an inpatient PT. So I haven't really been like keeping up with my outpatient skills. So I think that will also be helpful to have someone who is probably more experienced than I am in outpatient PT specifically, or I guess I should say orthopedics specifically.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That was my biggest question. Do you feel like, even as being a new grad, you're technically, as some people would say, globally most knowledgeable you'll be your entire career because you won't be pigeonholed into one career kind of avenue. Yeah, I think it's something some PTs need to kind of realize. Like, hey, just stay in your lane. If you don't do outpatient stuff, go talk to an outpatient PT. Like, there's no shame in it.
Yeah, it's all the same profession. The settings are very different.
Very much so. Very much so. So tell me, let's get into the falling aspect. So, you felt your instinct take over, and I would assume, well, tell me about your first fall where you broke your back.
So that was more of a drawn out process. I think that I had been having pain for like the entire summer so I was playing soccer at the time in high school. I was 15, and I'd been having pain all summer. And then at the very end of the summer during preseason, when we were getting ready to go into the varsity season, I was warming up for a game and I stepped on the ball and slipped and fell in a sitting position on top of the ball, felt a pop in my back. And then like an idiot, I kept playing. And then
classic.
Right. Yeah. Typical high schooler.
You got to play, right? You can't, who cares if you get hurt? Get me in the game.
No game. So yeah, then I went through 9 months of PT and no soccer. So that was fun.
Okay.
But yeah, I forget what your question was.
No, it's just my question was kind of like, how did it happen? You know, was it an instinctual thing, or was it just that was kind of just an accident? I mean, you were playing a game and went down.
And it had definitely been like weekend before that point. That was kind of just like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Oh, so you had a little bit previous kind of pain back down there?
Yep.
Okay. What did you break?
L2, 3, 4. I had spondylolysis.
Oh my gosh. How are you doing with that now?
Oh, it's fine. I mean, it gets achy if I'm standing for too long or sitting for too long, but I mean, that's one of the reasons I went into PT, so that I'm not doing that.
Fair enough. And then we go to school and we sit down all freaking day long, and we're told how bad sitting is for you.
Yeah.
I love it. So, you know, let's talk about kind of almost the original reason you messaged me. So we have this instinct in us, and instinct, you know, by just natural, you know, biology and evolution, we use this instinct to keep us safe 90% of the time. But in cases of, you know, falling on the ice, it's actually fairly unpredictable. And because the surface is different, you know, reaching out has a different effect when you're slipping versus being on solid ground and whatnot. So what were your thoughts on, you know, as you were falling, you kind of said, oh, I know I shouldn't be doing this. What do you think you should have done in that situation? If you can go back and you look at it from the outside and kind of could direct yourself, what would you have done differently? And what do you think, you know, other people should think about in that situation?
So if I had had more control, then I probably would have just let my left foot keep going and bring my right foot forward too, and kind of transition into a slide and a roll towards the left.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the road was kind of close, but there were no cars and there's grass in between the sidewalk and the road. So I had plenty of space. So yeah, that's probably the first thing that I would have done. And I wish I had done that, but here I am.
Hindsight's 20/20, right?
Right.
So, I mean, we were talking about, you know, how do we turn the instincts off? And I know we originally talked that as good as the falling stuff is, if we don't practice it and make it second nature, which is kind of my big thing, is that we need to practice this stuff, whether or not we think it's important. When we need it, we need it. And we need it to be second nature. But for you, you know it wasn't second nature. You don't practice falling on the daily. You're not a weirdo like I am. Just being honest. But, you know, how do you think people can, and we're totally speculating here, but how do you think people can turn off that instinct, or at least slow down for about, you know, a millisecond and kind of be like, all right, I need to put my foot somewhere else? Do you think that's even possible? Or do you think in those situations it's you're on autopilot and there is no choice?
I think it's a little bit of both. Because I remember clearly thinking, like, it felt like it was happening in slow motion when I was thinking that, like, I shouldn't be doing this. I should not have brought my foot back. So I think that since it did feel kind of like slow motion, that it is possible to try to kind of overcome the instinct. I'm not entirely sure how to do that, because it's so hardwired in our body to just do whatever we can to try to protect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, I mean, your whole mentality and process of, you know, the science of falling, everything that you've been doing, I think that that's a really great start to first start educating people about why this is important and why they should care. Because if people don't necessarily understand that, then they're not even going to try to start overcoming their instinct in the first place.
Oh, for sure.
And then moving on from there, I know we were talking about just practicing falling and trying to habituate ourselves to not react or not let our instinct control us, to try to take more control ourselves, so that if we can kind of reduce our just instant panic response and try to promote a more calm response that we can kind of control ourselves, then that would be, I mean, I'm not an expert here, but I would say that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking about so I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know if any of the listeners have seen it, but my video on stepping reactions. And so it's kind of actually what you used, but I think there's a different part of it I want to, you know, play into. So stepping reaction is whenever you're falling over you and you're outside your base of support, you physically have to step in the direction you're falling to stop yourself. On ice, it doesn't really work because you're just going to have a secondary slip. But with these patients that I do it with, I kind of build them up from doing, you know, just basic lunges in every direction. So very controlled. Then I do kind of what I call, basic support leans or kind of cone of stability leans. So they stay in their base support in their feet if their feet are right next to each other. And they kind of slowly lean side to side. And then what I get into, and this is the part I'm thinking about here, is that I physically start dropping these people. They lean into my hands. I drop them. And then they have to react and catch themselves, or I have to catch them, unless I want to be sued for dropping a patient. But, but so far I haven't dropped anybody. But no, the big thing here is that I have multiple levels. They drop themselves, and I tell them when I'm gonna drop them. And then the last level of this is I don't tell them when I'm gonna drop them. I physically hold their weight in my hands, and the minute I drop them, they just have to figure it out. And so oftentimes when I do this last step, people get scared shitless. They have a visceral feeling of I'm gonna die, I'm gonna fall, I'm gonna break a hip, whatever it is, especially depending on their personal fears. And I was thinking, and we talked about this, that I think that would be kind of exercise to habituate this fear of falling and almost make it so the brain doesn't go on autopilot. They have a split second to think, because once you get used to that sensation of, oh my gosh, I'm falling, you get used to it. And I think you have a lot more time to think about your options. So I think that would be interesting. But like you were saying, in your setting, that's not necessarily always appropriate.
Right.
Correct.
Yep. Because an inpatient, so I'm in a hospital and in a skilled nursing facility, or also called a nursing home. Most of my patients are 60 or above. I get the occasional patient that's in their mid 40s or something. But I mean, and the other thing is a lot of my patients have more medical necessity than a typical patient in outpatient PT. So they have something else that's going on that's not just the injury. And that's kind of the main reason that they're in that setting to begin with. So I know that like insurance companies would probably frown upon me dropping my patients.
100%.
Right.
This person's here because they're hurt. Don't drop them. It's just the way it goes.
Exactly. And especially because like in inpatient settings, we are trying to minimize falls. So, I mean, if I'm going around dropping all my patients, I don't know if that would technically count as them falling. Even if
you word it right on the paperwork, it does. Yeah. It depends how you word it. Well, what are you guys doing for balance training, fall prevention? What's your kind of program you got going there? It's a kind of Wild West and do whatever seems right.
So at the nursing home, we don't really have like a set program or really a whole lot of equipment because the gym is so small. A lot of the treatments end up happening in the patient's rooms. So that is a little bit more just like, okay, what do I have available in the room that I can use? Or what can I bring from the gym to their room? I'm a little bit more limited in the nursing home, but in the inpatient rehab hospital that I had only treated one patient before I injured myself.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, and during COVID too, it's like jobs are gold, right? And oh my gosh.
Yep. But the inpatient rehab hospital is brand new. It's beautiful. I love it. I love all the people there. And they have a ton of equipment, a massive gym. I think it's like 2,600 square feet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So we have a biodex balance system so that we can work on like limits of stability. We can't really work on stepping strategies because you'd step right off the machine and then,
Hey, that's an aggressive fall, right? You're training them. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, because it's, like an 8 to 12 inch drop.
Survivable, I think. Yeah, right? A couple of broken bones, you're fine. Exactly. You're solid.
Yeah, no big deal.
It's a learning lesson.
And we also have, a BITS system. I have no idea what the BITS actually stands for.
I've heard of it. I've never. I don't know much about it, but I'm still learning about all this crazy stuff out in the world right now too.
So it's basically like a massive TV screen, and you do all these different programs to. From a PT's perspective, I would mostly be working on scanning. So like practicing scanning the environment so that if there's something like on the ground in front of you or like a tree branch hanging out in front of you, then you are able to scan the environment and see that obstacle and avoid it so that you don't trip or hit your head or whatever.
Well, and that's kind of the thing with black ice, right? You said there's a bunch of black ice everywhere. You can't see it until you're like right on it. And it's mostly you're going to be feeling it more than anything.
Right.
So how do you get around that? You know what I mean? Like what's your strategy for walking on ice when you're not feeling like you're, 4-time Olympic gold medalist ice skating around the sidewalk?
Yeah.
What do you do?
If I was smart, I would have just stepped off of the sidewalk and walked onto the grass like my boyfriend was doing.
Fair enough. Okay, that's
I
solid.
mean,
What if
if you can avoid ice, then definitely avoid it by all means.
avoid it, right? So
Right.
I guess my question is, like when I was living in Maine, obviously grass is the number one. I went for grass anytime I could because I've fallen on ice a few times. Penguin walking, is that kind of a strategy you use sometimes? I mean, does that make sense to you,
I've
or is that something
never
you've never
tried
done?
it.
You've never
I've
tried
tried
it?
it. No, but I
Oh,
mean, I
wow.
could
Okay.
see how it could potentially work because you're basically widening your base of support and kind of rotating your feet outwards. That's kind of how I'm interpreting it. Is that
Oh
fair?
no, it's not exact. Not.
No? Okay, never mind then.
I like the idea though. I mean, I see it. There's kind of a little thing.
Yep,
So it's kind of
exactly.
like instead of taking full strides, you
Mhm.
take your walks and you do these small little walks. So it's almost like you're shuffling a little
That's
bit.
what I was doing.
Oh my gosh. Oh, so you had these strategies didn't even work for you at all, huh?
No,
Okay.
not quite.
So you just needed some spikes on your shoes, is what you're telling me.
And I have crampons. So,
No way. Okay. So you, against all odds,
Yep.
you got taken down. So you're okay. All right.
I didn't
Man.
have the crampons on, but I do have them in my apartment.
Oh, see, so you
Yeah.
lied to me there for a second. I thought you had these
No,
crampons on. You were
no.
shuffling
Just didn't
walking.
want it.
You had ice, like, you were just set up and then you fell. But okay, so you have them, you just don't use them.
Right. Unless
Oh,
it's like unless I'm hiking in the winter.
that's fair. That's fair. I think that's kind of the curse of being on the East Coast and kind of, or in the Midwest, whatever, where you get a lot of snow, you almost become immune to it. You think you're like a pro at everything. So
Exactly.
like a bunch of
I mean,
Mainers never use snow tires, and I can't get around at all with enough to have snow tires on.
yeah. Like I grew up in upstate New York, in Oswego, so it's like a little bit north of Syracuse,
Hmm.
right off of Lake Ontario. So I am very used to ice and tons of snow. And I was also born in Maine, and we always go back there every Christmas to visit my family. So, and obviously, I spent 3 years in Maine for school.
Yep.
So again, I'm very used to this sort of environment. And then when I came to Ohio, specifically Columbus, where it's more inland and not as much snow, so I
Hmm.
was like, "Ugh, I can handle this. This is easy, piece of cake." Nope.
Nope. Ohio had other plans for you, apparently.
Apparently,
It was not a fan of you being there.
well, yeah, definitely put me in my place.
Yes, for sure. So I guess, yeah, I mean, even if you have strategies, falls are going to happen. And I guess
Right.
that's always been my kind of mantras. You think about a person on a motorcycle, right? You talk to anybody who rides motorcycles, they will almost always tell you, I'm going to go down someday. It's not a
Mhm.
matter of if, but it's a matter of when. And I think, the vehicle we drive every day is our human body. And the fact of if you can go, 90, 100 years without ever falling to the ground,
Mhm.
you might be God, because that doesn't happen
Right.
ever. So I guess that's a premise behind science of falling. Like, know you're gonna fall and just
Right.
accept it and learn how to do it. And I guess it's something I'm still trying to figure out after kind of talking to you about. It's like, how do you take the instinct out of it
Right.
without having someone have to do, like 30 hours in a year or something of trying to learn these fall techniques? How do you kind of short circuit that instinctual idea and just do something else? Obviously, one thing is to just play it safe and walk on the grass with your boyfriend,
Right. Mhm. Yep.
but we think we're invincible half the time, right?
Right.
It's in the moment you're like, nothing's going to happen, we're fine. It's just right now is forever, right? It just, nothing's going to happen to me. So in your situation, I mean, you didn't bust your skull open, right? You didn't,
Right.
just absolutely thrash your shoulder. You did thrash your ankle. So I don't know if there's a 1-to-1 ratio there. It's kind
I
of,
mean, that was the only thing that I heard. So, I mean, I must have, after I felt my ankle pop and was like, oh, shoot, that's not good. I don't remember what happened immediately after that. I just remember, like, I guess, for lack of a better term, waking up. I didn't hit my head or lose consciousness or anything.
Mhm.
But the next thing I remember is lying on my left side. So and like nothing else hurt. I don't have any bruises or scrapes, or didn't at the time, like on my hand and wrist, whatever. So I must have rolled after the fact.
Well, there it is, right? And that's, I guess at
Yeah.
you minimize injury. I mean, I wish there was a video of this fall, like some security camera in the corner of a store or something.
Yeah.
So we sit here and like analyze it. At the end of the day, I feel like you did what you had to do in the situation, right? I can't sit here and be like, oh, you rolled or you didn't do it correctly. Yeah. It was just an interesting story you told me, and I thought I'd have you kind of tell it on the podcast.
Absolutely.
But I feel like considering what the kind of story you're saying, maybe you did exactly what you should have done. Because if you were not to have stepped back or sideways, you could have fell and hit your head or something. There's always a chance for more injury. Right. Do you think that could have been a possibility in that situation, or you think it was just?
Probably, and I think that's probably one of the things that I was trying to prevent, because I do also have a history of concussions. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I don't want to hurt my back, and I don't want to hurt my head. So I guess I'll just step back. And then,
well, there you go. Now you got to protect the head, the back, and the ankle now.
Exactly.
You still got two good arms and one good leg. It's all good to go.
I don't want to hurt those two, though.
I don't want you to hurt those either. I'm just saying, there's other options now.
Yeah.
But I think after hearing the story, you did what you had to do. You saved your head, you saved your back. The ankle was a little worse for wear. Do you have hardware in there now?
Yep.
How many? It says 6 screws?
Yep, a plate, 6 screws, and the tightrope. So, and those will never come out unless they start to bother me sometime in the future. And I'm like, I want these out.
You read my mind. I was going to say you're ever going to get those out, but never mind. You answered my question.
I'm going to light up at, any sort of metal detector or other imaging. Mm-hmm. Titanium. So going through airport security will be fun now.
The bionic woman. I love it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So what's the rehab process looking like for you? If you can kind of give the listeners a scope of that, if you kind of know in your head, or do you have a protocol that you're following right now for your rehab?
I don't know that I exactly call it a protocol. It's more of just like an outline of general things that I should be doing. So like right now, I can be doing active range of motion 5 to 10 times a day outside of the boot. I'm not allowed to do passive range of motion or any sort of hardcore stretching yet, because at this point I'm still trying to protect the surgery, the incision, and the fracture, because my bone is still fractured. It's not completely healed yet.
So what's the timeline on there? What do you think?
Probably another 2 to 4 weeks.
All right, so it's coming up for you.
Right. Yep. So once I hit 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks is typically when bones are healed enough to kind of do more aggressive range of motion and strengthening outside of the boot. So I will be out of the boot in 2 weeks. Once I'm at 6 weeks post-op, I'll have a lace-up ankle brace, and then I can start outpatient PT. And then I guess I'll just kind of see where it goes from there. And
learning to walk again.
Falls. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, Liz. Well, I guess is there anything else you want to talk about? That was kind of what we discussed talking about. And I think it's kind of interesting because, I'm in California now. If I had to ask half these people outside how to walk on ice, they'd have no idea, let alone drive in it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to kind of think about when someone goes to a climate like that, where, hey, there is black ice, you might not see it and you might go down. Like, what are you going to do is something you have to think about. Right. Any other kind of thoughts you had on any of that?
I guess the one thing I would just say is to expect the unexpected. Murphy's Law kind of governs our whole lives. So anything can go wrong at any time. And if you are cocky like I was and think that you're invincible, then something is likely going to go wrong. And that is essentially preventable. So whatever you can do to kind of prevent any sort of situation like that I was in, like I could have easily just walked on the grass and I would have been fine. So just anything that you can do to try to think ahead and kind of, like I said, expect the unexpected. So if you're like doing some sort of activity that might have the outcome of you falling or injuring yourself in some other way, then think about what you can do to try to not let that happen. So how to do it more safely, I guess.
I love it. Let's end on there before I mess it up with my my terrible ending speech or whatever I would want to
No
do.
worries.
Anything that you want to, tell the listeners, like where to find some of your stuff? Are you doing anything like that right now? Or are you just focused on recovering up and just healing and getting back to a normal day-to-day PT job?
Yeah, I'm pretty much just focusing on bettering my ankle. So,
I
have been doing some online webinars or continuing education stuff, whatever I can find that's free. But yeah, other than that, I'm just focusing on me right now.
I love it. I love it. You're not crazy like me trying to do like 4 different projects at once. I'm getting burned
Yeah,
out.
I've done that before, and I decided I don't want to do that again.
I know. I just want to say before we go, Liz was the person in our class that kept everybody on time. She had this calendar that we all had access to, and she made it so we knew when the assignments were due. You personally saved my ass probably like 6 or 7 times, I'll be honest.
You're welcome.
So I really appreciate that, because without you, I would have been lost. I'm like, I don't even know what class we're in. Matter of fact, I think I asked you a few times, hey, what class are we going to right now? I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, you're not the only one. Even after graduation, some people have been like, hey, Liz, what do we need to do for like the boards or like licensure, things like that? I'm like,
oh my
it
gosh.
depends on your state.
Well, it just goes to show how much of a leader you are. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you for helping us, pass our classes for sure. Passing boards, apparently, for some people.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you for coming on the podcast with me and doing this. So thank you so much. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for being our lovely class president and taking care of all the drama.
Class pres. I don't think anybody who's listening knew that, but now they know I was a class president. So hey,
yeah, he sure was, and he was
I
great.
did my best. Some people hated me, some people loved me. It kind of, goes with the territory.
Everyone. So.
All right, Liz. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.